Are you ready for the Alec the Science Kid show? I want to welcome science writer Brian Dunning to the show. This guy is super awesome. Before we get started, let me tell you just a little about who Brian is. He is the host and producer of the podcast Skeptoid, critical analysis of pop phenomena, which you can find at Skeptoid.com, where he applies critical thinking to urban legends and popular pseudoscientific subjects promoted by the mass media. Skeptoid has a weekly audience of 156,000 listeners. He is also the author of 4 books based on the Skeptoid broadcast. He's a computer scientist by trade, and he uses new media to showcase the rewards of science and critical thinking. He appeared on numerous radio shows, none of which are awesome as this one though, right Brian?
Of course.
And he also is on television documentaries. And he also hosts the science video series inFact with Brian Dunning at inFactvideo.com. He's also a member of the National Association of Science Writers. Is there anything else you don't do, Brian? You seem like a really pretty busy person.
I don't juggle very well. Or ride the unicycle.
You seem like a really busy person.
Yes, that is true. It's Skeptoid is definitely a full-time job, and doing the video series also is just something I got to squeeze in whenever I can.
Okay, well, welcome Brian, and thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah.
So today we're going to be talking about the Pacific Ocean Garbage Patch. If you Google Pacific Ocean Garbage Patch, you'll get so many inconsistencies on how big the problem is, what size it is, and you'll find all kinds of pictures of huge patches of trash just floating in the middle of the ocean. So it makes it pretty difficult for the average person to get the real facts on it, which is why I invited Brian on the show. So Brian, you did a video segment just on the Pacific Ocean Garbage Patch, which I thought was really interesting, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, it's a really interesting topic. I first heard about it when people were emailing me and said, hey, I heard that there's a giant island of solid garbage floating in the middle of the ocean the size of Texas, or twice the size of Texas, or whatever size they'd heard. But I can't find it on Google Earth. So what's the facts of this? So that's when I decided to do an episode about it.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. So can you tell us what exactly the Pacific Ocean Garbage Patch is?
Well, as you may or may not know, the currents in the Pacific Ocean, the North Pacific Ocean, the part of the Pacific that's above the equator, go in one big large circle all around the ocean. And Hawaii is just about in the middle of that. It's very close to the middle of this. It's called the North Pacific Gyre, which is this natural current. And the physics of such a current it eventually draws all the floating matter, in addition to wind and weather patterns. It draws the floating matter into the center of the gyre, the vortex, whatever you want to call it. And so that's where people allege that this giant garbage island exists. All the trash that gets thrown into the ocean, and trash unfortunately does get thrown into the ocean. Where else is it going to go? But it's going to end up right in the middle. And that's pretty much where the legend part of it begins. And as you mentioned, if you do a Google search, you'll find people dramatically exaggerating and promoting this idea, finding pictures of garbage that are usually from harbors in third world countries where they don't have any kind of laws at all, showing immense amounts of trash floating in the water. Yeah. And they say, hey, this is from the Pacific Garbage Patch. A lot of that is just not true. In fact, virtually all of it is not true. So
what is the Pacific Ocean Gyre?
It's just the natural currents caused by the rotation of the Earth and by heating and wind patterns that take the whole ocean goes in one big circle.
So can you see the garbage patch from satellite, or can you not?
No, there's nothing to see. remain a matter of years for some of the longest, slowest degrading plastic. By the time something gets to the center of the gyre near Hawaii, that journey takes anywhere from about 1 to 5 years, and very little plastic can survive that long. That's why if you go to Hawaii, you'll see beautiful blue oceans. You won't see solid garbage floating. Most of the plastic is gone long before it ever gets to the center of the gyre. And no matter how fast we throw garbage in the ocean, we're not going to be able to keep up with the time it takes to biodegrade. We wouldn't be able to build an island of solid garbage if we tried. Now, that's not to say that it's not a problem, because some plastic does get out there, and the amount that we want to be out there is zero, and it's a non-zero amount. So, we do need to reduce the amount of trash that we throw into the ocean. The vast majority of it comes from Asia and countries in the South Pacific that, like Indonesia, that either China, people that don't have environmental laws or that ignore their environmental laws. That's where most of this garbage comes from. And from there, it floats out there, and by the time it gets to the center of the patch, if you were to take a strainer, like you'd scrape across the surface of a swimming pool, very rarely would you be able to pick up a speck of plastic. There's just not that much out there. It's not something you'd be able to see. If you were to look off the side of a boat, you might see a little speck here, a little speck there, but it's certainly not solid. It's certainly nothing that could be visible from a satellite or from an airplane.
So, is it a problem?
It is a problem. The largest problem is that it enters the food chain. These little tiny specks of plastic, they're often compared to if you took a salt shaker and shook it onto or pepper, shaking it onto the surface of the water, or confetti, something like that size. Plankton that eats other plankton confuses that with something to eat, and they eat that. Then they get eaten by other plankton, that gets eaten by fish, and it enters the food chain. That's not the end of the world, but it's not a good thing. If we stopped putting all plastic into the ocean, within a matter of probably 5 to 10 years, the problem would completely be gone. The plastic does eventually disappear. It's just that while it's out there, it is entering the food chain and becoming part of, it eventually gets back to us, and we don't want that.
I don't really want to eat plastic.
No.
And where did all
and neither do the fish.
Yeah. And where did all this misinformation about the Garbage Patch get started?
There's a huge tendency for people to exaggerate environmental problems. Most of that exaggeration is done for the right reason. It's because they want to draw attention to the problem. And the problem with doing that is that you can't come up with a correct solution to the problem if you have a misunderstanding of what the problem is. For example, there have been proposals to take boats to scoop up the garbage and somehow burn that garbage for fuel, and that would keep the boats going so they could just permanently be out there riding around scraping up the plastic and using it. Now, that wouldn't work because there's not enough plastic to do that. In fact, scraping it up, sifting it, straining it off the surface of the ocean isn't going to work anyway because there's just simply not enough of it to do that with. So if you had a misunderstanding of the problem, you would not be able to solve it. You might spend money creating such a boat and then find that you're unable to use it. So it's always important to have the correct understanding of the problem if you want to find a proper solution.
And if President Obama called you up today and told you you're immediately putting you on charge of cleaning up our oceans, how would you clean them?
Well, there's very little that we can do in the United States. Most of the problem, like I said, comes from other countries that don't follow any kind of environmental guidelines and just dump vast amounts of garbage into the ocean. As far as physically trying to clean up the plastic that's already there, like I said, there's just not enough of it that you'd be able to make any kind of an appreciable difference by dragging enormous nets. You'd probably cause more damage to marine life than you would help by doing something like that. I think the best way to solve this problem is simply to stop it at the source. and let nature take its course, and the plastic that's out there will eventually disappear.
Thanks, Brian, for clarifying the Pacific Ocean garbage patch for all of us. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, I have some more questions for Brian Dunning, so don't go anywhere. J Salon. Change of mood lately? Change your hairstyle. Come see one of their master stylists. They are the winners of the Greater Phoenix Area Hair Wars and are moving on to compete in the World Hair Wars in Las Vegas. Mention Flydoodle Science to receive 20% off your first visit. Call today for your appointment, 623-486-2476, or stop by. They are conveniently located at 8378 West Thunderbird Road, Suite 105, Peoria, Arizona 85381. They are looking forward to seeing you. The Alec the Science Kid show is also brought to you by Schumann, Adriano, and Company, Certified Public Accountants. Eyes West Optical, located in the Crossroads Town Center in Surprise, has been serving the Northwest Valley for over 18 years. Eyes West Optical provides glasses, contact lenses, sunglasses, and eye exams. They pride themselves in serving their clients with the best quality, service, and very competitive pricing. Scott and Karen are the licensed opticians with almost 60 years of combined experience. Dr. Sarah has been practicing optometry for over 24 years. Eyes West Optical looks forward to serving all your optical needs. Mention you heard this ad on Flydoodle Science and receive a 10% discount on all optical goods. Zathena Cosmetics and Skincare offers the finest spa services and cosmetic products in Phoenix. Come in and let their experts take care of your beauty needs. See why so many TV personalities, models, and people just like you refer their family and friends to them for makeup lessons, cosmetics, consultations, European skincare, facials, microdermabrasions, LED treatments, massages, and more. Visit Zathena Cosmetics and Skincare at 19420 North 59th Avenue, Suite E-510, Glendale, Arizona 85308, or go to zathena.com. Alright, so we're back now with Brian Dunning, a science writer. So Brian, what are a few of the science myths out there that just drive you crazy?
The myths that drive me crazy, there are a lot of them. It tends to be what's popular at the time. I do a lot of talks at schools and colleges and universities, and I think what I see the most of is what I refer to as food woo. People with misinformation about the health of certain foods. People think some foods are miraculously healthy. People think some foods are incredibly bad for you. Almost all of that diet stuff that you hear is all nonsense. I think the other thing that drives me crazy is what's popular on television these days. As you may know, most of the science channels on television have turned into pseudoscience channels, promoting things like ghost hunting, etc., etc. Even just straight up pseudo-history, bad history. Anything that sounds sensational, they make a TV show about it, put it on, broadcast it, and call it science. So television definitely drives me crazy all the time.
What made you decide to create Skeptoid.com and inFact?
Well, it was really the creation of podcasts that kind of provided an outlet for me to combine what my skills and my interests were. I studied computer science, and I discovered writing for film and television, two kind of very different disciplines. And when podcasts first appeared, 1994, 1995, something about that, I think it was. It was just the kind of the perfect convergence of my two interests, a technology-based way to broadcast information. And luckily for me, the interests that I had were just kind of general science information and cool, weird stuff like ghosts and Bigfoot and all these other kind of urban legend subjects. What I was doing with the show just turned out to be popular. So that was just really lucky for me, and so the show's been quite successful. I just think that it has to do with good luck by me for what I happen to do, appealing to a lot of people.
It's really popular. 156,000 listeners? That's a lot.
It goes up and down, yeah.
Yeah,
it's really hard to track the popularity of podcasts because some software fails and re-downloads the same episode twice, and sometimes, you can't tell if it's one person listening or two people listening. A lot of times, you have errors in the other direction where one single download will go to something like a local network at a company or a community, a DSL provider, and that will be downloaded then many times from many different listeners. So it's really hard to get good counts, but that's about the best I can come up with. I do my own statistics on the show and everything, and keep track of it myself.
Did a pretty good job on it.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you tell my audience about the 4 science books you've written and where they can buy them at?
Yeah, they are. They're based on episodes of Skeptoid. Every time I get to 50 good episodes together, they go into a book that's it's basically the transcripts of the episodes, but they've been adapted for print, so they're more for reading than for listening. And so each book, there's now 4 of them. I've got the 5th book ready, but haven't put it together yet. So that's a total of 200 topics, and it's all weird stuff that you've probably heard of, that you may or may not believe in. And I try to come up with new information that you haven't heard, no matter how popular the subject is. So they're a lot of fun. People really enjoy them, and the best thing about them is they're a great way to share this information with people who don't listen to podcasts, which is most people. And you can get those books at Skeptoid.com, or you can just search for Skeptoid on Amazon.com, your favorite online book resellers.
So that sounds like a really interesting book.
Yeah, they're lots of fun. In fact, I pick them up myself sometimes because I've been doing the show for about 6 years now, and I pick up a book and say, gee, I don't even remember doing this one.
Yeah.
A lot of really cool stuff.
I definitely want to read that, yeah. And what is...
Well, they're available for ebook, too, so I'll send you a copy.
Thank you. And who's the coolest person in science that you have ever met?
Oh, boy, that's a really, really tough question. Who is the coolest person in science that I've ever met?
Besides
I
me.
think most people would answer that with Neil deGrasse Tyson. He is a lot of fun. He's really interesting. He's a great speaker. He's a friendly guy. Adam Savage from the Mythbusters.
Yeah, I love him.
Adam, because in real life he's just the way that he is on television. He is a lot of fun. I would say if I was going to pick one single person, I'd say my favorite person is Dr. Pamela Gay. She's an astronomer. She has a podcast called Astronomy Cast that she co-hosts with a guy named Fraser Kane, who's also a very nice guy. And Pamela Gay is just the perfect combination of wonderful personality, fascinating information, excellent communication skills, and a real desire to help people learn really cool stuff. So she's one of my heroes. The more you get into listening to some of the best science communicators, the more you'll really appreciate the better science communicators, and the more your interest will really develop in learning and promoting some of this information yourself. I've learned so much. When I started doing Skeptoid, I had a background in computer science and a background in having read a lot of stories.
Right.
That was the extent of my science background. But now, after 6 years, I know hundreds and hundreds of people I know hundreds and hundreds of subjects. I'm fascinated by hundreds and hundreds of things that I didn't even know existed 6 years ago. It just opens up so many worlds. So, I mean, I really encourage people to get onto iTunes, go into the science section, and download a few shows that look interesting, because it really just open up magical new worlds for you.
I think it's really amazing that some people think science is kind of geeky, because there's so many things out there that's just really cool.
Yeah, and that's a natural result of not being familiar with it. If you pick up, you can pick up a magazine like Popular Science, which I think is a great way for people to get started. Everything that they publish in that magazine is cool. You know, what's happening with robots and what's happening with space exploration, things that everyone enjoys. And that's kind of a great first step, a great stepping stone to get people really interested in learning about the wild and crazy stuff that's out there. Because the boring, nerdy stuff, yeah, that's done in science, but it's not really part of the part of science that we communicate to the public.
If you were abducted by an alien, how would you explain Earth?
Abducted by an alien, and I was the guy that they wanted to explain Earth to them.
Yeah.
I'd probably make up a bunch of stuff and just have some fun with it.
Yeah, that's...
No, I wouldn't do that. I would tell them that we have superior weapons to theirs and that their ability to take over the Earth will not succeed. That's a great question. I would expect that people on other planets are much like us in that some of them strive for greater science knowledge and a lot of them don't. So I would expect that the people on the other planet, they're not all super advanced, they're not all incredibly brilliant scientifically. I would think that we would have a lot in common, a lot more than other people think we do.
Do you believe in aliens? Other life on Earth?
Absolutely, they are out there now, or have been, or will be. I don't think there's very little statistical doubt about that. Whether we'll ever be able to contact any is unfortunately a very different question. There's so much the problems that have to be solved for interstellar travel. Interstellar communication is a little bit easier, in fact quite a lot easier. Interstellar travel, though, those are some immensely difficult problems for anyone to overcome. And if they live in the same universe that we do and have to follow the same physical laws that we do, I'll be very impressed if any civilization is able to visit another. Certainly within the lifespan of our civilization. So, as much as I wish we'd be able to meet some aliens, I sadly believe that we probably never will.
Obviously, there's no life on the planets in our solar system, but out of all the billions or maybe trillions of planets out there, there has to be life on one.
Yeah, think of a Christmas tree that has blinking lights on it. Those lights come on and off all throughout the tree. Because we're not just talking about the distances involved, we're talking about the times involved. Now, for the existence of the Earth, 4.5 billion years, there's been intelligent life on here for a couple of thousand years. You know, maybe 100,000 years if you go all the way back through early man. But that's just a tiny blink of the light bulb on the Christmas tree. And what you have to have is two lights blinking on that are really close together, and they have to blink on at just the right time so that those two civilizations will exist at the same time in order to visit each other. Because eventually every planet's going to die, and every civilization is going to die. There's too many cosmic bad guys, meteors, gamma ray bursts, all kinds of things that are going to destroy civilizations eventually. No civilization lasts forever. So you have to keep in mind the time part of the problem as well. It can be really difficult for two civilizations to exist close enough in time and in space to ever meet. Yeah, I mean, all of those problems, if you want, the easiest thing to do is to simply communicate by radio. The next easiest thing to do would be to send a robotic probe that's a one-way probe. Basically just put some information on a disk and send it out there. Much more difficult than that is creating something that can do a return journey. Much more difficult than that is something that can sustain life, that can support an astronaut. You're going to have food, oxygen, water, etc., much heavier radiation shielding. The craft would have to be physically much larger. It's going to have to be of multi-generational design because we can't get anywhere within the lifespan of one person. We have to plan for hundreds of people to have a breeding population to survive on that spaceship. And then again, it's much more difficult if you plan for those people to be able to come back eventually and make a round trip. So, yeah, every time you add something to that mission, it makes it geometrically more difficult to ever achieve. So for now, radio communication is simplest, cheapest, easiest. That's what we're doing, that's what we're trying, that's what we're hoping other people are doing out there in space somewhere, and we're listening. So far nothing, but who knows, we're all optimistic.
Would a radio signal really reach that far?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of different signals that already do reach that far. Every time you look up into the night sky and you see a star, you're seeing, basically, light from that star. If we knew a planet was there, we could send them basically a fiber optic signal with a laser. So, yes, we can absolutely. If you listen to a TV channel that's tuned to static, or a radio channel that's tuned to static, about 1% of that noise is radio noise from the Big Bang. Radio signals do stay out in space for a long time. So yeah, that's very doable.
That's really weird.
Yeah, it is weird. It's cool.
Yeah, it is cool too. Well, thank you again, Brian, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it and enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you very much for letting me come on. It's a lot of fun to reach new audiences, so I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And for all you listening, make sure you go on Skeptoid.com and inFactvideo.com to see Brian Dunning in action. He's a super cool guy, and I love watching his videos. Again, thanks, Brian.
You're